Joe Walsh, not the singer, but the conservative radio host and former Illinois congressman, is reportedly seriously considering challenging the president for the 2020 GOP nomination. And he could announce as soon as this weekend, according to the New York Times. Walsh, who served one term in the House, has called the president unfit. He also told Politico that people are eager to see the president challenged. Also today, former South Carolina Congressman Mark Sanford announced he's headed to Iowa. He's going to test the waters. Here's his tweet. We'll be going to Iowa next week and would love your wisdom on local perspectives. If you are from the Buckeye State, Iowa's the Hawkeye State. The Buckeye State is Ohio. Stanford has problems with geography, obviously. That's a joke about the Appalachian Trail and Argentina. It's a callback, but you can look it up. His flub comes a day after former Ohio Governor John Kasich saying he's headed to New Hampshire next month to take a look at things. He saw a lot of things in New Hampshire last cycle, but he's going to maybe take another crack at it. All this as a new AP poll shows the president's disapproval rating at 62%. The approval rating down to 36%. Should President Trump worry about these polls, he claims they're all fake news, or should he worry more about the potential challengers in his own party? Here with me tonight to break it all down, former speechwriter for George W. Bush, Fox News contributor Bill McGurn. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Guy.
All right. Let's just real talk here for a second. I know everyone is a little bit excited in the media. Right. Ooh, there could be people jumping into this race against Trump. It is totally a fool's errand at this point, right?
Exactly. It's not necessarily a fool's errand if you want to improve your audience for your radio show or something that you are a presidential candidate and so forth. But in terms of defeating Trump, there's nothing there. This just gives folks like us something to talk about, write about.
In August,
yeah. and through. But it's just silly. And the reason it's silly is that within the Republican Party, there's not a lot of dissatisfaction with Donald Trump among the voters. And you see it at his rallies. There is a lot of dissatisfaction outside the Republican Party,
right,
but not within the party itself.
It's the independents that are most worrisome on that front, but you're not going to unseat an incumbent in a primary process with Democrats and independents.
Look, and also the Republican culture, even with Donald Trump, it's not the Democratic culture. Democrats always routinely challenge each other and really fight. Remember, Jimmy Carter had a challenge from Teddy Kennedy and so forth. Republicans, we're more like the Elks, where you say, it's Guy's turn. You know, you could be 98, but that's how Bob Dole and John McCain get on the ticket,
It was definitely not Trump's turn, but he just sort of wrestled the thing away.
But Republicans have that disposition. And you look, when a Republican president is unpopular, as George H.W. Bush was within the party, Buchanan did pretty well, a lot better than people thought in New Hampshire. But he didn't win, and he didn't win any primary. And that was against George H.W. Bush, who did have a lot of people within the party upset at him.
We put the poll up on the screen a moment ago, that AP poll, and it seems like it's still a bit of an outlier. We'll see if it's a trend or not. How bad would it have to get for Republicans to start getting nervous and maybe entertaining this idea?
Well, I think you'd have to see this in the Republican Party. You'd have to see mass discontent in the Republican Party among the voters. And I'm not sure we're seeing that. You know, the criticism of Donald Trump is that he's not playing outside his base. So he goes to these rallies that are really kind of extraordinary things with so many people, but it's to that narrow band. But that band is Republican, right? So until there's that dissatisfaction within the party,
very, very
I mean,
loyal.
weren't we told Evan McMullin or whatever, was going to be the great hope last time? It just doesn't materialize.
Joe Walsh, Mark Sanford, John Kasich, Bill Weld is technically already running.
Right.
You know, bless him. Are any of these people kind of remotely threats, even as spoilers?
I don't think so. I mean, I think things would have to rapidly change. Look, the irony of Donald Trump was, I was a skeptic. I was for him in the sense of his judges. That was really the only kind of concrete conservative policy that you could latch on to where he was well within the parameters of established sort of Republican conservative thinking. But he's turned out to be, on a lot of issues, more conventionally conservative than people thought. And not that people don't have disagreements with him, but on the tax cuts, on the deregulation, which I never would have thought was possible. So I just don't see that discontent within the parties. I mean, we live in a polarized society. You mentioned the independents. They're going to be up for grabs. And it may be a case of who alienates more. Does Donald Trump alienate so many college-educated suburban women that he loses in some key states, or do Democrats alienate so many working-class workers that they can't get those swing states?
Even
right?
suburbanites, right? Like
right.
it's one of these situations where I keep saying Trump's greatest asset, aside from the economy, are the Democrats. Bill McGurn, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
See you soon.